Thank you.
Doesn't feel the need to be here.
Okay. Right, let's make a start then. Thank you very much for your patience this morning, members. Yeah, welcome to this meeting of the Licensing Committee at the 13th of November 2025. Before we start, can I just ask the officers on the top table to introduce themselves, please?
Thank you, Chair. My name is Amelia Volta, Democratic Services Officer and Clerk to this committee. Thank you.
Thank you. Hi, Karen Proctor, Principal Environmental Health and Licensing Officer. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And I'm Councillor Christopher Oram, and I am the chairman of this committee. So on to the agenda. First thing I need to do is appoint a vice chair for today's meeting. I need nominate. Can I nominate or nominate the? Yeah. Okay. So in that case, can I nominate Councillor Rake to be my chairman, my vice chairman today? Don't get ahead of yourself. Vice chairman, seconded by Councillor Taylor. Thank you very much. All those in favour, please show. Okay. Thank you very much, Councillor Rake. If you could join me, please. Thank you very much. Just whilst Councillor Rick gets settled, we'll carry on with the agenda. Apologies for absence, please.
Thank you, Chair. We received apologies of absence from Councillors Abbott, Penfold, Preswell, Thomas. We were expecting Alan, so we'll note her apologies as well. And welcome Councillor Taylor subbing for Councillor Penfold and Councillor Bonham, who's subbing for Councillor Thomas. Thank you.
I think Councillor Preswell sent her apologies via email first thing this morning. Perfect. Okay. Thank you very much indeed. So next on the agenda, the minutes of the last meeting. We need to agree the minutes of the previous meeting of the Licensing Committee held on the 4th of September. So can I just check that everyone is happy that those minutes are correct? And can I have a proposer for that, please? Do I need a proposer for that? Yeah, I'll propose that. Can I have a seconder? Seconder, Councillor Hawkins. All those in favour, please show. Okay. Thank you very much. We also need to approve the minutes from the Licensing Subcommittee, which held on the 18th of September 2025. I will propose that. Can I have a seconder to approve those minutes? Again, Councillor Hawkins. All those in favour, please show. Thank you very much. All agreed. Perfect. So on to, sorry? Thank you. Thank you for that. Division of agenda. I don't see any reason to divide the agenda today. That's right. Incorrect. Perfect. Thank you very much. Next on the agenda, declarations of interest. Members, could you show if you have any declarations to make? No. Perfect. Thank you very much.
Well, my wife is licensed.
Do you want to put your mic on there, Councillor Panel? Thank you.
Just occurred to me that my wife is licensee of South Brent Village Hall. I don't know if that needs to be declared or not, but it's just a general interest or a personal interest, I would say.
Thank you, Councillor Panel. That has been noted. So no other interest to declare from members? No. Perfect. Thank you very much. So moving on to the next agenda item is the review of the statement of the licensing policy 2026 to 2031. We have Karen with us today, who's going to give her report, and we will go from there. So Karen, could you please introduce your report, please?
Thank you, Chair. It is a requirement under the Licensing Act 2003 that our statement of licensing policy is updated at least every 5 years. Our current policy came into effect in January 2021, so it now needs to be updated before January next year. The purpose of the licensing policy is to assist the licensing authority when making decisions and to provide advice and clarity to applicants, business owners, and local residents. The proposed draft document showing the tracked changes from the current policy is at Appendix A of your papers. Many of the amendments reflect changes in legislation and statutory guidance. Other changes include new sections relating to violence against women and girls and drink and needle spiking. The new sections and amendments are highlighted in red on the tracked changes. Part of the process of reviewing the policy involves undertaking a consultation on the draft policy with the public, local businesses and responsible authorities, as well as the organisations that have an interest in licensing issues. The consultation ran from the 24th of July to the 30th of September this year, and a list of all those consulted is at Appendix D of the licensing policy document. The responses we have received are at Annex B. We have reviewed the responses and have made some amendments to the policy, where appropriate, as detailed in Annex B. These amendments have been included in the draft policy document at Annex A. This is the final opportunity for any further additions or amendments to the policy, and if necessary, and if you are satisfied that the document is suitable for its purpose, we would request that you put forward a recommendation that it is adopted by full council in December. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Karen. Members, do we have any questions for Karen at this point? Yeah, Councillor Pan.
I've got a few questions about issues that arise from the policy. Do you want to take those now or later? Yeah. First of all, I welcome the additions. I think that it's very useful to have those extra protections for people, and particularly women who may be vulnerable, and men as well, of course. There's mention of the Terrorism Act, and I think venues that hold more than 200 people will have to take action. I have an interest because, as I've said, my wife is licensee of our village hall. Can you explain how much action venues like that will have to take? Because for voluntary organisations, I don't know how onerous it's going to be to have to come up with a sort of counter-terrorism plan.
So at the moment, it's very difficult to say. The guidance isn't out, and it will be enforceable by the Security Industry Authority, of which they are now creating those posts available to create those policies, and then the guidance with it. There is some information and some guidance on the Protect UK website, which we are directing people to at the moment if they have any queries with regards to it. But it will all be down to the risk assessment of the business to deem how much they need to put in place for those qualifying premises.
Will we be able to give sort of advice to voluntary organisations and to businesses as well, as a point of contact for them to seek advice?
So we can certainly, once the guidance is out, we can certainly signpost people to the guidance. And, you know, we are working with the counter-terrorism police at the moment. They've got a new regime, which is called ACT, A-C-T, for local authorities. So we're working at the moment. That's just starting to build momentum. So when we do know more about the guidance, that when it comes out, we'll be able to signpost and put something on our website to support people with the new information and legislation.
Thank you. I've got a few more questions, if that's all right. The Ask for Angela initiative. I know some surveys have been done which has found that some establishments simply don't understand what this is all about, and people have asked for Angela, and just been told there's no one here of that name. And this is really quite an important initiative to protect women who feel they're in a vulnerable situation. Are we going to carry out any tests of our own to see whether establishments are aware of this and the staff are made aware of it?
So we do have a plan to work with our police licensing colleagues to look at the Ask Angela processes along with the drink and drug spiking. So that's something we've kind of got just considerations at the moment to work with Devon and Cornwall Police on a work plan to speak to businesses and maybe go out to businesses and talk to them. So that's in the early stages of planning. But yes, that is something that we, because of this policy and the introduction of more information, that's something that we were looking to do.
Thank you. Just a couple more, if that's all right.
If you're moving on to another area, Councillor Panel, perhaps, because I've got questions on this area as well, and then...
Thank you. Yeah, the document currently reads that those venues that take up the initiative. Can we be asking venues to take up the initiative?
So it's not, we do provide example conditions, and the police will also ask for certain conditions. It's not something that's mandatory at the moment, but we do put it in example conditions and recommend that it's something that they consider. At this moment in time, it's not a mandatory condition that we have to insist people put on, but it's certainly encouraged.
Can we opt to insist?
I'm not 100% sure that we can. It's something I will need to take away with our legal representative to ask.
Well, on the same sort of line, and maybe as a middle ground, I'm looking at paragraph 2.5.15 and wonder if we could have something in there that's a bit stronger than should be proactive, and say that applicants and licence holders will be expected to, which doesn't mean that they absolutely have to, but will be expected to demonstrate their policies, or to provide policies for preventing violence and against women and girls, etc., and actually sort of bump up the language in that way, and also include perhaps if we were to do that, include in that paragraph something about reporting as well.
Yeah, can you just repeat the paragraph, please?
2.5.15.
Thank you. Yes, absolutely.
Councillor Dommett?
Can I just ask, how do people get a licence? Who provides the training? Are we the people who provide the training?
For a licence as a whole, or this particular concern?
A licence to sell alcohol. How do they get one?
So there's a process in legislation. If somebody wants a new alcohol licence, they have to apply to us as a licensing authority. There's a 28-day consultation period, and people can make representations about if they're concerned that one of the licensing objectives isn't being met. And if there are representations, we bring it forward to the licensing subcommittee for a decision to be made. With an alcohol licence, exempting community premises, because there's an exemption for this particular issue, but every licensed premises needs to have a designated premises supervisor. And that designated premises supervisor is responsible for the alcohol sales. They go through training. They have to have a qualification, a licensing qualification. We do a DBS check on those, and they declare any convictions. And so the designated premises supervisor, who is responsible for the sales, will have the specific training. But with regards to the premises, it's a process with regards to applications.
So we are only focused on premises. Like, who does the person training?
So there are recognised training providers. We don't provide training. There's recognised training providers that we signpost people to, and we expect, we make sure that we see the certificate that they've done that training with the process of their personal license to allow them to
Okay.
be.
I thought if we had more involvement in it, then we could have suggested that the Ask for Angela training happens within that training. But if we are not involved in that, then I will step away from this line of inquiry. Thanks.
Although,
I mean, if we're signposting people to these training providers, can we sort of at least talk to the training providers and say, we'd really like to see this included in I mean, presumably they decide what training they give.
Yeah, I mean they're accredited training providers, so it's on the government website. So that's our involvement, I'm afraid.
They are very thorough, and I would be surprised if they're not already doing that, knowing how thorough the training is. It's an intensive 2-day course, I think, that's involved, and you have to get 100% on your test to get a license. So I'd be surprised if they haven't taken that on board, but it's certainly worth checking.
thank you, Councillor Prout. I will come to Councillor Bonham in just a second, but to shed some light on this, because I actually hold a personal licence myself. So, in a previous life. So, and it's completely separate, and they have their own governing bodies that are like other governing bodies like the CITB or, pick your industry. So we don't really have any sort of influence on what that structure or syllabus would be as a part of that training. But I suppose there isn't anything wrong with us making a representation that those areas are covered as a part of this policy. But it's they're national governing bodies, so we have, I suspect, very little influence over that syllabus. I'll come to Councillor Bonham next, please, and then I'll have Councillor Dommett. We'll come back to yourself, Councillor Panel, because I know you had other questions. Want to give way?
It's not on this topic.
It's not on this topic.
Chair.
Okay, so
I'm happy to wait if
Thank
there's more on this topic
yeah,
or
thank you,
related.
Councillor Bonham. In which case, Councillor Dommett, please.
Yeah, so we can't influence the training that they do, but you are saying that we signpost to training. So can we also signpost to the Ask for Angela training? Can that be added into the mix?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, we can put that on our website. And again, we do provide example conditions with that requirement on it. So, but yeah, absolutely, that's something we can do. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Well, it's the first time I've been in this committee, so it's an interesting learning here, and I don't envy you having to take account of all of these policies when you grant licences. It seems quite an interesting challenge. I've got two points to make on the policy. I mean, firstly, obviously, it's a very thorough document. I want to talk first of all about the alignment of policies with other nearby authorities, because you say we've tried to make our new policy or our changes similar to other authorities, but given the fact that we're going to be facing local government reorganisation soon, isn't it increasingly important that we're aligned as much as we can be? So could you tell us where there's still some differences and whether there's any issues around the major differences, or how those will be closed if we get local government reorganisation, which means we're going to have to merge what we do with other authorities? Thanks.
I don't think I can't answer specifically what the differences are. They are very, very similar. But obviously when we do a consultation, we may get different feedback to other authorities. So we provide the responses and we amend the policy in regards to the consultation responses that we get. But it is very similar. We use the statutory guidance and we use the legislation to write the policy. So whatever differences there might be, they would just be minor, I would suspect, but I wouldn't be able to pinpoint what the exact differences are.
Okay, but we may have to go through a sort of comparison exercise and another change to this whole policy if we have local government reorganisation, so it's standard across areas that would be merged. But that work's not been done yet.
No, but like I said, they are very similar across Devon, so it wouldn't be. And whilst there's a statutory requirement to review every 5 years, we can review when there are changes, so we can do that. But we can certainly undertake that work to see what the differences are. But I don't think there are that many major differences with the policies across Devon.
Okay, thanks. My second area is with regard to the temporary event notices, which I think are, controlled by other legislation. It's not really within our control. But I do have some concerns about them, and residents and businesses in my area have had some problems with these temporary event notices. And I'm wondering if we can strengthen the way that these are handled to some extent. So, what we seem to have is a situation where someone can apply for a temporary event notice, recourse for parish councils or residents to comment because there's just not enough time. And in any case, they're not taken into account. The only people that can comment, I think, are police and environmental health. So, what I'd like to see is when there's an event which has caused a problem, and someone complains after that event, which is possible, that is really taken into account when that same venue has a new temporary event notice, and that our environmental health department really takes notice of that previous complaint. Does that happen at the moment? And if not, can we not put that into the guidance or this document?
So yeah, we are bound by legislation, and you are right, it is only the police and environmental health that can object, and they only have 3 days to do that. So even if we were to consult with others, we wouldn't be able to take their concerns into play. We do always encourage people, if they have had a concern with an event, to report it to us in environmental health, because without that background knowledge and understanding that there has been a concern, we aren't able to then utilise that for the following year. But environmental health will look at complaints received, and if a temporary event notice is if we do get notified of the same event in the following year, that is for environmental health to look at the history of that site. And we do hold safety advisory groups, so where we have the police, licensing, highways, SWAST, environmental health, all in a room looking at the event management plan. And if there are concerns raised at the previous event, they will be raised at the following safety advisory group. But if they are reported, that would be down to environmental health to object. That as a licensing authority, we are notified and we can't object or approve it. That would be down to environmental health and police to raise concerns. So if there is reports of a noise, nuisance or a concern, and environmental health have that on as a history for that particular venue, it would be down to environmental health to raise that as an objection.
I'm mightily confused because when you say we, isn't environmental health part of South Hams District Council? That's we, isn't it?
It is. We are in the same department, but there we are. I am a licensing authority, and environmental health are a separate entity in the regards of law and legislation. So we do work together, but it's our environmental health colleagues that have the specialisms to understand the noise and statutory nuisance side of things. So I can't. I would be under the licensing authority perspective. I can't object or approve a temporary event notice. That's our environmental health colleagues. We do certainly, if we know that there's a concern, we raise it with our environmental health colleagues. We absolutely work together, but they would be the ones, because of their expertise and understanding of the statutory legislation, they would need to be the ones to raise their expertise with that objection.
So I'm reading in 4.10.6, and this is the bit that I'm wondering whether we might, or this is the first bit I'm wondering whether we might want to strengthen. The phrase is, the authority must consider any objection on the basis of licensing objectives. I'm wondering whether that should explicitly include any comment from any previous objection on the same site, because it's not really clear. It says we're going to consider any objection, but it doesn't. An objection can't come it doesn't make, you've already explained that there's not enough time, there's no consultees, so I don't see how any objection could invalidate, you know, unless it's a very strange case, could actually come. So these objections must take account of previous complaints, otherwise it's a bit of a nonsense. But I'd like either your reassurance or to change the wording here so that we can see that these objections would include any comment about previous events in the same site. What do you think about that idea?
So whilst we can consider as a licensing author, so it really would be down to environmental health colleagues to make the decision whether they felt that they would object to the temporary event notice because of their expertise with the statutory nuisance legislation. It really would be down to them to sort of put their objections. They can consider the history, and if there's concerns that have been raised, absolutely they will look at those concerns and considerations, but it would be down to them to object if they felt that it reached the trigger for being a statutory nuisance.
Now, I'm sorry, the more I hear your answer, the less comfortable I am, and not because of anything in licensing, but, you know, when I hear the phrase statutory nuisance, my understanding of that is that it's a repeated and consistent nuisance. So if somebody has an event in 2024 and there's a nuisance from it, and then they want another one in 2025, by definition, there's no nuisance from that, because it's not an ongoing and repeated annoyance to the neighbours. So environmental health won't do anything. And that's what's annoying to residents, that there can be an annual event that is consistently disruptive, but no one takes any notice or action. So again, I'm sorry, I'm not getting at you and I'm not getting at the wording here, but I'm just trying to see if there's a way that we can work around this so that a response from a resident can be taken into account in future years. And maybe there is no answer. I don't know. I seek your advice because I'm not the specialist here.
And we can certainly strengthen the wording on it, but obviously that still would be down to environmental health to make that decision on the concerns that have been raised and any history of that venue to make the decision to object. But we can certainly, you know, improve the wording on that, but they still ultimately have that decision.
I'm happy to consider what you recommend. I mean, I don't know what the wording should be, but maybe through the chair we can look at some changes if the chair agrees or the committee agrees that I've got a valid point here.
Jonathan first.
Yeah, thank you, Councillor Bolam. I didn't realise it was your first licensing committee, so welcome. Yeah. So, sorry.
Thank you.
Being remiss. I know Councillor Panel has more questions, but I'd like to bring in Councillor Hawkins, please, because I think you had a question relevant.
It's relevant to what you've just actually raised.
Thank you.
Maybe I should have declared an interest because I'm a member of Dartmouth Royal Regatta Committee. So whether I need to put that down. I understand people's complaints and concerns when there is an annual event, but what does sort of annoy me to a certain extent is that when somebody moves into an area and then starts complaining about an event that's been happening since 1800 and something, and that does annoy me. I mean, no, thankfully not. But I have been there for about 40 years, and that does annoy me. And I'm concerned that everybody that puts events on in the South Hams and anywhere in the country are usually volunteers. They're not paid, they're volunteers. And any more kind of bureaucracy on those events really does worry me, because you're not paid, you do it in your spare time. So bureaucracy, in my view, needs to be cut if it can be cut, and certainly not made any more onerous to those committee members. I understand what you're saying, it's environmental health and it's noise really more than this, and I can understand that and I support what you've been saying. I think that's really important to put on. You were saying also, which I wanted to comment on, about us trying to have our policies as closely aligned to our neighbouring authorities. I'm assuming, and maybe I should have seen this already, I'm assuming our policy is the same as West Devon's, so we don't have to go through all that process when LGA takes place, because it's not an if, it's a when. It's either in 2 years, 3 years, 4 years, 5 years, it is going to happen, it needs to happen. And I'm assuming, because we are obviously going to be working, I think, perhaps, maybe, closely with Teignbridge in the future and maybe Torbay, I'm assuming our policies are very close to those already, and I'm assuming that you've already looked at that. You say there's only minor tweaks, but what we don't want is that when that new authority takes over, we don't want to spend years, that new authority, making certain all the policies combined, because that's not what needs to be done. It needs to, as soon as that authority is started, it needs to go straight into it and straight providing those facilities and policies for the community. So I would hope we're already doing that.
Yeah, so you probably are not surprised to know that the West Devon licensing policy is exactly the same. So it is identical. Teignbridge is a very similar authority to us, so yes, it does align. Torbay being a unitary, they may be that might be slightly more different, but yeah, we'll absolutely look at those and see what the differences are, and if it, and go from there, I think. But I am convinced they are very, very, very similar.
Yeah, I would just say in response to Councillor Hawkins that, of course, all of this work is going to take place over the next few years, and we don't know to which authorities we're going to be paired with yet. So it's very difficult, I suspect. Sorry?
You'll be Plymouth.
I may be Plymouth. I may not be Plymouth. Yeah, but I'm not going to bite to that. So, it's very difficult for any officer to put a report together that's going to align with all the different districts and city council and then expect for it to slot in seamlessly at the end. So we've done what we're doing today because we have to, but we can review it again when we're closer to the time, when we know who we're being paired with, and that work will get done. But also, Councillor Hawkins, you mentioned about annual events that have been going on for years and years and years. Regardless of how long an event has been going on, that doesn't take away the validity of somebody's objection if they've moved into an area for the first time. I think that's something that we need to consider quite carefully, because I take Councillor Bonham's point that actually the history of previous objections should be considered, but I understand where you're coming from. It's a bit of a two-sided coin there.
I mean, in our village, we had somebody complain. We just bought a house opposite our church, and they complained that the parish council was cutting the cemetery grass, and it was causing noise and inconvenience to them. Well, when you buy a house near a church, you've got to realise there's maintenance. So that's why, if you buy a house, say in Dartmouth, there's an event, and that event, it happens every year. So that's got to be taken into consideration. Sorry.
No, thank you for that. Yeah, I think.
Councillor Bonham and myself.
Thank you. Councillor Dommett then, please, and then we'll come back to you.
Sorry, made myself jump the queue. To come back on events only being done by volunteers, it's not true. There is big business in festivals and there is big damage done by festivals, so I think it is important that we do have these things in place to stop massive overuse of open spaces, annoying neighbours and communities. So I think it's got to go both ways. It's got to be a balance to enable communities to put on wonderful events, but also to keep them safe and lovely for the public.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Bonham, please.
Yeah, thank you. I agree with what Councillor Dommett said. There are some volunteer events which are fantastic. There are also some business events. So I do think, having had a limited experience of this, that the noise policy, or let's see exactly what it's called. The noise management plan within this temporary event notice is a good method of having the organiser think about the noise impact, because that is one of the things. Litter is possibly another one, but noise is important. Having the organiser think about the impact, and I think they need also to have a named person and a phone number to call if a nearby resident or member of the public wants to complain. So I think that is good policy. Hopefully it's not too much admin. So I'd like to specifically suggest that we change a word or words in 4.10.8, where it says that where music is provided after 11, it's recommended that organisers have a noise management plan. And I would like to make that recommended stronger, and I don't know exactly what the word should be, but we require organisers to have a noise management plan. I see Jonathan nodding. I hope it's not too onerous to have a plan that says how we're going to handle noise after 11 p.m. and who to call if there's a problem.
I would have thought any sensible event organiser would have that in any case.
Well, I can say that in my own experience, limited experience in the chair, and Councillor Rake next to me might be able to support me with this, but actually a lot of temporary licences that come through this committee do end up having, excuse me, they do end up having, a policy as such, a commitment as such in place that we want to see before we give them said licence. So, I don't think, well, Karen can perhaps highlight this for me, but I don't think it'd be too much trouble to include that in a bit of a more stronger tone in the policy.
Yeah, we can do that. I mean, with a premises licence, which is the ones that would be coming to committee generally, if it is for a festival site, then it is absolutely that they need to provide an event management plan, a noise management plan, a traffic management plan, that it would be put through the safety advisory group. With a temporary event notice, again, if it is a weekend event and it reaches the threshold, I do call a safety advisory group where we have all of the organisations that will look at traffic management plan, that will look at the noise management plan and the event management plan. So with venues operating after 11 o'clock, our process internally is that we do inform environmental health. They get it anyway, but as a secondary, we inform them that we've had a temporary event notice for after 11 p.m. So they get a secondary notification. So they do get a couple if it is after 11 p.m. We can certainly try and word it in a way that is suitable, sufficient, and we can change some of the wording on the application form and request that it's attached. So we can certainly look at that. With regards to the temporary event notices, we have just recently put our temporary event notices online, so people can. We don't have to, but we have decided to, because obviously the concerns with the temporary event notices. We have put an online register now, so it is freely available to go and have a look and see what temporary event that there are in the South Hams.
Yeah, thank you for your answer. I'd be pleased if we could just strengthen that so that the noise plan is mandatory after a certain time. 11 seems reasonable if the committee or other members think that's a good idea, because it's just good practice, I think, as people have said.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Rake, and then I'll come to Councillor Panel, which is on the same subject.
I'm afraid I have to disagree with Councillor Bonham. I think that it's ultimately it's up to environmental health whether they make a representation on the noise management, and as 4.10.8 clearly says, we're recommending that people include a noise management plan to avoid such a thing. I do, in line with Councillor Hawkins, I think that, so I don't think we should make it mandatory for this reason, which is that where events are organised by volunteers, it's a very onerous process for them. I liaised with, for instance, the Dartmouth Regatta Committee this summer, and was, I think, shocked as a novice at that, to see. I mean, the traffic management alone was, months and months of emails backwards and forwards for. So I would be, and I think that as an authority and as a district, we are made immeasurably richer for events like that, not only financially but culturally, and so removing some sort of balancing the amount of red tape that organisers have to face, and unfortunately it is a one-size-fits-all policy that has to cover both commercial operations and volunteer operations. So I think finding that balance is going to is tricky and depends therefore on. So I wouldn't like to see that mandatory. But people should be advised that if they don't include one, then that increases the likelihood, which I think is exactly what 10.8 does. I also think in the overall thrust, if I might use that word, of your questions or of your comments, I certainly think that where there have been past complaints, that should be taken into account. I'm thinking of the splendid, and if I can be parochial myself for a moment, the splendid Black Autumn fireworks display. Regularly, that upsets residents, some of whom have been long-standing residents of the village. But the mere fact that certain people are upset or annoyed by an event is not in and of itself a reason for preventing it happening. If you applied that logic, then Glastonbury wouldn't happen, Black Autumn fireworks wouldn't happen, and a lot of events in between in terms of scale would. And so I think you'd have to be very careful about throwing the baby out with the bathwater. And by their nature, temporary events are temporary, and so it is a transitory, if occasionally repeated, annoyance. So I think those factors have to be borne in mind, and you can't just say, oh, someone's complained, therefore it shouldn't. I think that has to be taken in the balance, and we do need to ensure that where there have been previous complaints made, that those are considered by environmental health. But I think ultimately, if it's their job to make representations, then they should be left to do their job.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Panel?
Well, I don't know if this is necessary now, because I was going to suggest an amended wording to the where it says it's recommended, but if we're not minded to do that, I think we need to decide whether we want to change or not before I go on to that.
I think it would be useful.
Perhaps I can just try and ask then how much admin work this is, because as my understanding is that the noise management plan simply is a way of firstly publicising that there might be some noise, having a contact point for complaints. I don't know what else there is. Maybe you could help us understand if there is onerous. So I take the point, we don't want to burden people too much, but what I would say is by having a process of making everybody aware that noise might happen and giving them a way to comment, it is actually a positive step to reducing the concern and the complaint rather than stopping the event, which I'm certainly not trying to do. So perhaps I can ask Karen, what actually would it be, and would it be very difficult to do it if it was mandatory, and how much time might it take?
So a noise management plan can be anything someone puts on paper at the end of the day. We have seen some great ones, we've seen some not so great ones. So it depends on, whilst it could be a mandatory requirement, somebody could just say, we're going to go and monitor the noise on the boundary of the premises. Technically, that's a noise management plan. A noise management plan we would expect, and I'm not an expert in this because this is down to our environmental health team, a noise management plan we would expect to see an acoustic consultant look at the site and make recommendations. But with nuisance, it's very difficult because it all depends on the weather conditions, all depends on the site. So whilst it might be a noise one day, the next day the weather conditions might be very different, and it isn't. So a noise management plan, we would expect a professional to have done it. But again, our environmental health team will look at the noise management plan and see whether it's sufficient or not. And again, they do always if we hold a safety advisory group, it is absolutely a requirement that they notify the local residents letter drop with a number that they can call. So there is mechanisms. But with regards to being, it being mandatory, I think we might need legal representation on that, because I'm not 100% sure we could actually, but again, the definition of a noise management plan can be anything someone puts on paper. So if you're going to go down the mandatory route on that, you would need to put more specific requirements on what you'd expect it to contain.
Thank you for that, Karen. Councillor Panel, did you want to put any sort of words in place
I
that
was
might...
just wondering if we replace recommended with essential. It's essential that organised, which implies you have to do it, but is not a legal requirement. I don't know whether that would cover it or not.
Yeah, in fact, I had a similar thought that in the same area for point 10.8, that organisers are strongly advised to contact relevant that actually at the same point it is strongly advised that organisers provide noise management plan. So that would satisfy. I see a lot of nodding heads. Perfect. But before I move on, I know Councillor Taylor had something to say on this subject. So can I bring you in before we...
Yes, thank you. My point's been covered mainly, and the wording was what I was going to come up with. But I mean, if my memory serves me right, and I'm getting old, so I forget very quickly, we got certain controls over the time we granted license for, haven't we? Because I mean, I know recently we've had one come in for 2 a.m. and we've given the license to midnight. So we got certain controls over that timing, haven't we, for the music?
Only for a premises license. So a temporary event is a notification to us to say that this event is happening. So with a premises license, if there is representations about the timings, then yes, it'll be brought to the subcommittee for the decision to be made on whether they want to reduce those timings. With a temporary event notice, they can apply for anything.
We would grant a license for a music festival, go on all night then?
Potentially.
Yeah, I think that needs to be tightened up.
Thank you for that. So can I suggest that we do change that wording from recommended to strongly advised, that organisers provide noise management plans with the TAN, as it's likely to be required by environmental health to avoid a representation. Members, everyone okay with that? I don't need to move that to a vote if I'm amending the policy paperwork, do I? Yeah. Everyone's in agreement, so okay, that's great. Saves the vote. Perfect. Thank you very much. Members, any other questions? I think Councillor Panel did have a list. I don't want to take that away from you if you want to get through it, Councillor.
But it's very sensible that we all address the same point at the same time, so quite understand that. So please do dive in if you want to add. I think from my experience that we're getting an echo. Most of our licensed premises in the South Hams are very well managed, and we have comparatively little trouble compared with some places. Just advice, really. Two things I've come across in recent times. One is I am aware that licensees are not supposed to sell alcohol to people who are drunk or appear to be drunk, and yet I've known people going back constantly, clearly worse for wear and still being served. First of all, if we observe that, should we intervene? Should we report it to the police? Should we report it to licensing? What action would you recommend the public do if they're concerned about that?
So yeah, I would recommend that they contact us as a licensing authority. We work very, very closely with our police licensing colleagues, and we will look into it with both the organisations. So yeah, absolutely, come to us.
Okay, and on a similar theme, I've been to quite a reputable establishment in the last few months on 2 occasions. The first time I went for Sunday lunch, I was presented with a price list for drinks that didn't give quantities. And when I asked about the quantities, the member of staff serving me couldn't tell me. I wanted a bottle of cider. I said, is it 330, 440 ml or what? And it said, oh, I think it's 3:30. When it came, it was 4:40. I mean, it didn't matter, but by law, they are supposed to advertise what quantities they are selling and at what price. And on another occasion at the same establishment, I went to a bar. There were no price lists on display whatsoever, which again is a contravention of the law. Now, in the first instance, I reported that to the member of staff and said, I strongly advise you tell your manager to do something about the price list that is required. But I haven't. The next time I went, I was in a different part of the venue, so I don't know if that's been addressed or not. But I'm concerned that quite an established venue is selling drinks without any price list put up. So maybe I can tell you where it is later on. But I mean, again, is that something I don't want to cause embarrassment here? But is that something we should bring to your attention? And what would you do about it?
Yes, absolutely. If you've got concerns about anything in a licensed premises, do come to us. We do always investigate. So, yeah, if we don't know about it, we can't do anything about it. So please just report it to us, and we'll look into it.
Finally, a couple of other things. I think I can say that the off license, off premises sales, some companies take those age checks very seriously, because I've twice been sent bottles of wine for my birthday and other events, and been asked to provide proof of age of over 18. So at 79, that's quite encouraging.
You said over
18. And finally, if we could go to page 102, I think we've misspelled license 3 times with an S instead of a C. Page 102 in the headline and twice in the subsequent paragraph.
S is the verb.
Yeah.
C is the noun.
In defence of our team, that's a Devon document.
Well,
think,
that's Devon for you.
And
Let's hope they don't take us over.
in defence of your pedantry, Councillor Panel, I did, with another hat on, contact Devon to point out that they were a bit loosey-goosey with their uses of licence and the spelling of licence. So they are aware, and I hope they'll do better in future.
Yeah. Thank you.
In the usual way.
Any other editorials for our policy members, or any other questions or anything? Councillor Dommett, thank you.
Sorry, I also have a list. I have come to this committee late, so I haven't gone through all of the paperwork, so forgive me if this is covered. I would like to talk about street cleanliness. And it's our licensing authority's wish that we are sensitive to the impact of the premises on the quality of life of persons living or working in the vicinity of the premises. There are a lot of pubs, bars, takeaways, etc. that mean that there is litter and glasses and grease and whatever left on the street. How do we manage that?
So, I mean, there are conditions, but depending on the age of the licence that's been issued, there are conditions, or there can be conditions on the licence with regards to collecting glasses and clearing up in the vicinity, in the boundary of their premises. With regards to it being on the street itself, it's very hard to associate that to a particular premises, and it doesn't fall under the licensing objectives for a particular premises. So whilst we can sort of have more of a control over the boundary of one particular building, if it's within the street itself, it wouldn't fall under the licensing side of things.
As with other points that we've covered so far, where there's been loosely worded recommendations of we'd like you to do this, or this is a good idea, why don't you try that? Can we add something like that into the policy to say that it would be lovely if you, as a takeaway, did a street sweep or cleaned the area outside, which goes beyond your boundaries, but does something for our community, which means it's not left with kebabs all over the floor after a lovely night out?
Oh yeah, we could certainly make it stronger and provide that recommendation. Again, because it sort of falls outside of the boundary of the and again, the takeaway would have to be supplying food after 11 p.m. for it to be licensed. So if it doesn't supply hot food or drink after 11 p.m., it doesn't have a license anyway. But yeah, for any new licenses, we can certainly put that on as a condition that we would expect to see. Whether they put it on or not is a different matter. But yeah, we can certainly encourage that to happen.
Thank you. Does anyone else want to weigh in on that point before I move?
Thank you, Councillor. Karen, forgive my ignorance. I hope you can help me with this. But you mentioned that litter in the street isn't necessarily a part of the licensing objectives, but surely litter in the street is one, a public nuisance, you could argue, but also the prevention of crime and disorder. But littering is, by definition, crime and disorder. So how do we square that circle as a committee in terms of policy language when you say it's not necessarily relevant, but to an outsider might look very relevant indeed? Could you give me some advice on that, a bit of direction?
Yeah, so within the boundaries of the premises and the curtilage of the premises, absolutely, public nuisance, crime and disorder. But from the general street, you wouldn't be able to pinpoint. I mean, it's a difficult one because for each individual premises, then there are a lot of premises conditions that have about clearing up on the boundary. It's just difficult when it steps outside the boundary of the premises for them to clean the streets up. So I'll have to look into the options of that. It's hard to say that because it's outside the boundary of the premises, and whilst it would be the vicinity, it depends on the length of the street and the area and whether it would be defined as the vicinity.
No, that's perfect, thank you. So essentially what it leaves the boundaries of that business or organisation and goes on to what would be public land. It's then a council problem and not a premise problem. Therefore, that's where we sort of draw the line, as it were. Perfect. I had Councillor Hawkins next, and then I'll come to Councillor Bonham. Thank you.
Following on from what the chairman's just been discussing, being parochial, we have a number of establishments in Dartmouth that can clearly be identified. You know who I'm talking about. I'm not going to mention names. Where it does come from, and it does fill our waste bins up. Can we ensure that when future licenses for such establishments are taking place, that they are asked to take that into consideration and perhaps even provide extra bins around their establishments? Because it's quite clear that it's obvious where, and because their boxes are very large, it does fill waste bins up, and people don't push them always in. It just always waits on the top, and that is a real big problem at sometimes. And I'm sure it's the same problem all around those establishments all over the South Hams and West Devon. So it needs to be considered because it is created by them. We want them there. We want them providing the services, but they do cause hassle.
Yeah,
Can I just come back? Maybe we could even ask that they don't actually use those boxes, because it's those boxes that cause a lot of a problem.
Well, I think what we're doing is blurring the lines now between what is, a typical council function of, having the correct amount of bins for an area, etc., and what we're looking at today, which is policy. Yeah. So I think we've made the distinction of where our responsibilities start and when the responsibilities of a particular venue starts. So your point well made, but I think just on today's subject, that I think that's okay. Councillor sorry, Karen, did you want to come back on that? And then
Yeah, sorry, not with this policy per se, but there will be other legislation we can look at with regards to the littering side of things, like the Clean Neighbourhood Act and all those sorts of things. So whilst it might not fit into this policy, there are other legislative backgrounds we can use.
I had Councillor Bonham next. Is this on the same subject?
Yes, on the same subject, very quick. I mean, I would support the idea that, you know, in other policies, probably not in this, that we encourage an external bin where appropriate, you know, immediately outside premises where we think that's relevant. And I think that potentially serves a number of objectives. I mean, firstly, it encourages people to put their litter in that bin. It also flags to them mentally maybe that they should be throwing their stuff away in a bin, even if they're walking down the street with it. And thirdly, it might reduce the workload of South Hams in emptying our own bins. So I think if premises that are takeaway with a lot of rubbish have a bin, and some do, the coffee shops especially, a bin immediately outside the door, then that's a good thing. I'm sorry if it's a bit irrelevant to this policy, but I think it's a very good suggestion, Councillor Hawkins.
Thank you for that. Councillor Dommett, please.
Do licensed premises need to have a waste management plan?
Not under the license, but there are other legislation. They have a duty of care for their waste. So whilst it doesn't fit under the licensing side of things, there is other legislation that they would need to have the appropriate waste provision.
Should it be under the licensing?
It doesn't fit into the licensing objectives under the Licensing Act.
Apart
Are you
from
talking
the
about the
littering and the
disposal?
public nuisance. Yeah, yeah.
That they are disposing it in the appropriate way?
Mhm.
Yeah, no, it doesn't fall under the licensing objectives under the Licensing Act, but there is other legislation. And whilst the Licensing Act is there and we can put conditions on, if there is other legislation that can tackle the same issue, we wouldn't put it on as a condition anyway, because there's no, there's a legislation to deal with that. So it wouldn't fit under the Licensing Act, but it does have other legislation that we can utilise if they weren't disposing of waste appropriately.
Just to take this opportunity, do you know the other legislation so that I can use that?
Do I know that? Not off the top of my head, but I will come back to you.
I perhaps cautiously suggest that it's an environmental health issue and that they might be able to point Councillor Dommett in the correct direction for that kind of legislation. Is that right? Perfect. Okay. Was there any other questions at this point? Okay.
I've got one as well.
All right. Well, I'll give Councillor Dommett a break for a moment and turn to Councillor Rake for a moment. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. I was looking at. I get the sense that some of the language in this policy has been, as you say, provided by outside sources, whether that's the Portman Group or Public Health in team in Devon or whoever it might be. But 4.4.3, we've got a paragraph that we've added in that sort of bemoans how difficult it is for people to deliver alcohol to homes. We've already heard that they face the challenge of working out whether councillor panel is over or under 18, which it does make. But I don't really see. I mean, I don't. We sort of enumerate the difficulties that couriers might face and their desires to finish the job quickly, etc. I don't really see what purpose that paragraph serves. I think it's. It would be sufficient just to say that home delivery of alcohol carries additional risks, and these should be considered by those providing such a service, and then running into the persons who wish to provide alcohol delivery service should notify, etc. 4.44 and 4.45, etc. So I don't know how the rest of the committee feels like that, but. Obviously, we need robust ID checks, and I don't think we should sort of hint at an out for the people that oh, it's all terribly difficult, and he looked 18 to me, sort of thing. It's so I'm not quite sure what that paragraph is doing there.
It was put in as a result of Devon Public Health's concern with delivery, so it was just really picked out from their consultation responses.
Okay, in which case, let it go. It's not that important. But I mean, it feels like, as I say, that it feels like it's not. It's kind of not policy language. It's narrative rather than policy. And I think to that end, maybe we could consider reworking that paragraph to identify the problems rather than bemoan the fact that they are problems. I mean, it's then up to the delivery service to address those problems.
Yes, we can have a look at the wording on that one.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Dommett, you ready to come back?
On a new topic, if no one wants to weigh in on that one. Pavement licenses and tables and chairs on pavements. I know that you're smiling now because we've had plenty of back and forth on these. When a venue applies for a pavement license, are they told immediately that there are minimum requirements that have to be in place for accessibility, but then they still need to go through the application process and they still need to pay and be involved in that process? Or are they said, like, you don't meet the minimum requirements, you can't apply? I want to streamline that process more.
So yes, they are advised that if the minimum width of the pavement is less than 1,500 millimetres, the licence is likely to be refused, and do they want to continue with the application?
Can we say you cannot have a licence to have things on the pavement if it's not wide enough for people to still get past?
So I can't refuse an application. Anyone can apply, but obviously if they don't meet minimum requirements, we will refuse it. So the legislation doesn't say, it doesn't allow us to not take an application, but they are strongly advised that it's unlikely to be granted should it be less than the minimum requirements.
I feel like it's doing a disservice by saying we strongly advise and it will unlikely when internally we're saying no. So how do we get past that?
So I have gone out to nationally on this to get some advice, and the advice is that I can't refuse an application, but I can change the wording to see fit. But if somebody still wants to continue, they have a right to. So I can give them all the information up front. They do have it up front, but I can't refuse an application.
So when someone is applying for a pavement licence, they are told ahead of filling in the application paperwork and paying whatever fees they need to pay that it needs to be above this minimum for accessibility, and then they're still applying anyway?
Yes. Yeah, the information is provided up front and they are asked, the process is that they tick a box to say they understand the statement and then they can continue. And yes, you're right, we do still get applications.
Cool, bonus money, I guess. I do want to make a stance as a council that we are trying to be accessible for people to be able to use pavements, not that we are pro having tables and chairs and people might as well apply because they might get a licence. So that is just the stance that I want us to be able to take and say that we are not blocking pavements for people who need the room, like all of us do on pavements, so we don't stand in traffic. But if legally we are doing everything we can to make that point, then I guess... Does that appear in this paperwork?
Not 100% sure. I mean, I can certainly look at our processes again, and we're unlikely to get any new applications at this time of year. So I am reviewing the process anyway. So I'll just continue to review it and make sure that the point is very clear. But yeah, I can look at it. I'll definitely review it. But I'm not expecting any applications this side of the spring right now. So it gives me a good opportunity to spend some time on it.
Okay, thank you very much. Members, any other questions? Councillor Dommett, haven't heard from you in a while.
I wanted to talk through advertising and packaging. Like, I feel like there used to be stronger rules around alcohol being near sweets and fizzy drinks, or alcohol having cartoon pictures of animals on it, and they weren't allowed because it would be like children would want to then drink alcohol. I feel like all of that has disappeared. Can you talk me through where we're at with the guidelines on that, please?
So as a local authority, as a district authority, we don't have any jurisdiction with regards to advertising and labelling. That falls with our Devon County Trading Standards colleagues. So if there are any concerns with that side of things, so I can't comment on the advertising and what labels look like, because that isn't our jurisdiction, and I don't know the answers to that. We do strongly encourage, and again, I think the police tend to request conditions that the alcohol isn't at certain points in the business. So I know that we've had some concerns recently about alcohol near fizzy drinks and things. So if we have had concerns raised of concerns for underage sales or underage drinking on a new license, it's certainly something we can put on the example conditions and expectations that alcohol isn't, separated from those soft drinks.
Sorry, the alcohol should be separated from soft drinks, are you saying?
So we can put it as an example condition, and because if somebody applies for a new license, we do send out example conditions, and this is something that we've worked with police with and other organisations on what they would like to see on a license. So we can certainly add it on that for the retail sales conditions, that we would encourage them to consider that as a condition.
And that's only for new licenses. People who currently have a license and are selling alcohol in between the sweets and the meal deal, that we can't do anything about that as is.
We, on an informal basis, we can certainly speak to the business, but short of reviewing the license and insisting it's a condition, that's a very different process. We would have to have evidence that there's a ongoing issue with underage drinking in order to review the license. But if there is a particular concern about a premises, then come to us and we can have a chat with our police licensing colleagues and work together to request on a semi-informal basis that the business moves their drinks around.
Yeah, I guess it's difficult to separate the licensing objectives of preventing children from harm, and then also saying that we don't have jurisdiction over putting alcohol next to sweets or making it look really kid-friendly. So how does the licensing team work with the trading standards team about making that make sense?
So again, if we have concerns raised of underage drinking, we do go to our trading standards colleagues. Again, trading standards are the ones that would potentially do the, sort of, I can't remember what you call it, when they send someone in to see if they can purchase alcohol. So it is our trading standards colleagues that tends to be the authority that would deal with that. But if we were to get concerns of underage drinking, then we certainly refer it along with our police, and we can work together on what we're going to look at doing with that if there is a concern.
And on a similar vein, and I already know the answer to this, but I feel like it's a good discussion to have in the room. Vaping, you don't currently need a license for. Hopefully there will be discussions in the future. And selling that alongside children's toys and such. Do we have anything currently that we can do, or forward-looking, or being proactive about that with regards to our licensing?
Unfortunately not. It isn't a licensable activity at this current stage. There is tobacco and vapes bill that's out at the moment that is likely, again, it's still a bill and it's still going through, but it's likely that we as a licensing authority would have some part to play in it. So in the future, possibly, but at this moment in time, no, and it would be trading standards that you would need to go to for that at this moment in time.
Yeah, I worry that both threads would need more of a parliamentary look rather than a council look to be able to push through the relevant legislation to give us powers to do more in those fields. But you know that I share your concerns on both of those areas. So did you want to come back on that?
Well, I was just going to suggest that ahead of powers, we can put more recommendations in, and our preference for what our licensed venues do to make our district a nice place can be noted.
Yeah, and thank you for that. If you've got any particular concerns, then again, come back to Karen if there's an example that you wish to raise, and we can look into that together, perhaps. Perfect. Councillor Rake, you had something to say.
Yeah, just although one hates to mention the LGR, one potential benefit of it, and the benefits aren't perhaps frequently enough sung about, would be that it would open the path to public health and licensing working even more closely together. I know you talk to colleagues in public health at Devon, but I think in both those areas there's overlap between the two, and bringing the two together could well have benefits. I don't know if Councillor Dommett has finished her stream of questions, or if there are more to come. I have one, but
let's come back to that. Yeah.
So, well, this might sort of tie in to Councillor Dommett's rogue question. I'd just like to get a sense of, because we say this is a statement of licensing policy, but I don't see much in here about certain aspects of. There's nothing about pig racing, for instance, which I believe is ultimate pig racing. Yes, I believe ultimately a licensable activity. And some of the more arcane areas, sexual establishments, also likewise fall under our role as a licensing body. So, do we need to either say that this is a statement of alcohol and premises licensing policy, or is there a policy suite that includes separate policies for pig racing and sexually? Well, I mean, there is a separate policy for gambling, but I'm just wondering where this sits in the overall panoply of policies. Sorry? Taxi licence is also not covered in this. So I'm just to say I wouldn't want members of the public to be misled into thinking that this is soup to nuts, our statement of licensing policy.
So the statement of licensing policy is for the Licensing Act, which it does state if you scroll down. The next bit, it will say the Licensing Act 2003. Okay. With regards to pig racing, that falls under the animal activity licences, of which has separate legislation. Yeah, so this is with regards to the Licensing Act 2003. It's a requirement under the legislation that we have a statement of licensing policy. So this is what this is produced for. With regards to taxi licensing, we do have another policy for taxi licensings, which we will be reviewing next year. And with regards to the activity of animal licenses, it is under legislation. And there isn't, as far as I understand, a requirement to have a policy for animal licensing activities. But there's legislation and guidance separately for that. So, yes.
I think we should have a policy on that, Chair, because the committee meeting would be a lot of fun. But okay, thank you. That's helpful. So, and I did read. It does say that, and there is a purpose and scope. I wouldn't want anybody to. We've heard from Councillor Dommett that people don't always read the things that they're given. No, I was referring to your pavement licence applicants rather than anything else. So I think that, yeah, it would be good if, thank you for, if it was more obvious but if this is the legal format for it, then so be it.
And if you're planning a pig racing thing, then perhaps we should bring it forward in our next lot of work. But before we do, Councillor Hawkins, I think, had comments.
The Dartmouth Royal Regatta, I'm glad Councillor Akers raised the pig racing, because Dartmouth Royal Regatta would like to replace the Red Arrows with pig racing along the embankment, and hopefully might sponsor it.
Let's try and stay on theme, members, if we can. Yeah, we are looking at a policy today. Councillor Taylor, please.
I just wanted to correct my. I realise you can't race dead pigs, but the ones that the pig racing I went to were little puffy, fluffy little toy things on a table, and that's pig racing. Yeah, so we need to define one from the other if we can.
So yeah, we're talking about live animals with regards to the animal activity licensing.
I don't think there's currently a policy on toys, animal racing of such. Perhaps there's legislation for it. I don't know, Councillor. You might have to look into it. Yeah. Thank you for that. Councillor Panel, please.
I think it's a valid point that, yeah, looking at it, it doesn't say this is alcohol. Is there any way we can put a subheading that is about alcohol and licensed premises? Because I've been aware, having been on the committee for 6 years now, and sat through all the revisions of our zoos and wild animals and all the other activities we've heard of that we have licensed policies. It would be rather helpful if we could explain somewhere that this is dealing with alcohol and licensed premises.
Well, or perhaps, if I might make this suggestion first, before Karen responds, because it might preempt.
Sure.
I mean, I wondered if there could be a sort of inner front cover saying this is a statement of our licensing policy as regards alcohol premises, temporary event notices, etc. For taxi licenses, taxi licensing, gambling licenses, etc. See elsewhere. I mean, with links to them just inside the front page, so that it is the first thing that people see, and it does tell them that other policies do exist.
Yes, I'm sure we can look at doing something like that.
Well, I cautiously suggest that on the front page it says under the Licensing Act of 2003, and everything in its contents is referring to that act. So, but maybe a forward of something that just highlights those points that Councillor Rake mentions might be suitable for this policy. Councillor Bonham, I think you were poised.
Well, yes, just briefly on this. I mean, I wasn't really aware that there were so many other licensing policies, but 1.8.5 does list all this, and as I see it, it's alcohol, hot food, and regulated entertainment, and so if that's the scope, then that could be put somewhere as a summary in brackets to help clarify things, because it would be useful just to make clear what it covers, what it doesn't. Thanks.
Is that all right, Karen?
Yes, yeah, I can. Is it 1.8.5? It relates to the list, doesn't it? So yeah, we can put that as a summary.
A summary or a forward, at the start of the policy. Perfect. Have we got any other questions from?
Because it does touch on other issues like films and plays and all those other things, which is interesting. But there's not much about it in this policy.
Chair, in the interests of, I know that members have a busy day ahead of them, and therefore, at this stage, I'd be ready to move that we do whatever that we vote in favour of the recommendations before us, if you'd be amenable to that. With subject to the edits suggested that Karen has been diligently noting down, being reviewed, I would suggest, by the chairman and myself prior to presentation to the full council meeting.
Yeah, of course, that is the important thing, that although we're reviewing this and making recommendations, it's of course the full council that have the final say on the final draft. So that's what we're doing today. I want to come to Councillor Bonham because he's got a question, and I also want to bring in Councillor Callaghan as well, who is the portfolio holder in this way. So if we can do that, and then if there's no further questions, then I'm poised to go to a vote. Councillor Bonham.
Well, yes, just through you, Chair, that it would be helpful just to hear from Karen, just the list at a high level of the amendments that you're going to put in, because I didn't take the notes, and I think it'll be useful just to be clear on that before we do vote. I don't think I'm going to disagree with any of it, but just for clarity, if the Chair's okay with that.
Yeah, I'm happy with that. If Karen's got some
Yeah.
a summary.
I do, but please
do you need a
correct
moment?
me.
Do you-
No, hopefully. Signposting, that's separate to the policy, but signposting, ask Angela on our website. Stronger wording for the paragraph 2.5.15, which was...
Angela
Oh,
thing
that's
about
okay.
saying
Oh,
will
yes.
be expected to rather than...
Yeah, will be. The temporary event notices, so after 11 p.m, we're going to change it is recommended to strongly advised to provide a noise management plan. The to consider with regards to takeaway premises that need to be licensed after 11 o'clock. We can put more to encourage the litter and the rubbish considerations. More narrative, 4.4.3. I don't know if this was going to, with regards to Devon Public Health, you've explained that it's more of a narrative paragraph. So we were going to look to reword that paragraph to make it more of a policy statement, and to provide a forward or an inner front cover to explain what the policy is about, similar to what 1.8.5 paragraph states and the listing, and then to reference other policy documents that we have. Was there anything else? Payment license.
Yeah, I didn't. Sorry, I'm not sure that the point on litter was related to temporary event notices. Perhaps I misheard. I think the point about litter is more general in other policies. I think that's what we agreed. And Karen, I'm not quite sure if you've captured that correctly. Could you repeat what you think we're trying to do there, please, just for clarity?
So it was more to do with new licenses, to if they have a takeaway premises that requires a premises license because they supply hot food after 11 p.m, that we could look at strongly encouraging a more litter receptacles outside the vicinity of the premises.
Can I add to that? So that is just for the hot food litter. What about the alcohol premises that have got like cigarette butts and glasses and things outside? They don't need to go beyond 11 to have that included, right?
No, because well, as a condition on their they can open till whenever, but they would have a permanent condition. So temporary event notices don't have conditions. Temporary event notices don't necessarily have conditions attached, but a premises license will. So premises licenses will have generally, depending on them, will generally have a condition that requires them to clean up the vicinity of their area.
Can that be broadened with the same that you're hoping to do with hot food after 11 p.m? Can that be broadened to say we would love to see you clean up the street scene outside of your pub where your patrons have gone outside and left a mess?
So I think that's a difficult one for us to put in the policy, because it's just for a licensed premises, it's just the vicinity and the curtilage of the building. as it falls outside of that, it's more difficult because it falls under sort of street cleansing. So whilst I can look at doing something for the premises licenses itself, with regards to streets, we wouldn't be able to have that as a condition on the license.
How does that differ with the hot food version?
So the hot food, it was more to have a reciprocal outside their premises to encourage people to put it in the bin rather than the street itself,
Okay.
which is what we tend to do anyway.
Okay, Councillor Hawkins?
Not make it a policy, but can't we actually ask them that we take a pride in the South Hams and our towns, and we would ask our businesses to do the same? So not making a policy, but actually identify or highlight to them that we care about our towns. Please do so yourself. And I'm sure they will, but they don't always, as we know.
A very good point made. I don't want to linger on that point because we are looking to look at this policy. Councillor Rake, did you have something to say?
Well, I think I might have a sort of a possible suggested solution, which is that I think there are two things. One is the policy, which is shaped largely by what we can enforce in law, and the other is our aspirations for how businesses will operate. And I think that there's perhaps scope, and I hate to sort of add work onto officers, but for the licensing team and, for instance, the economic development team to work together to see if we can produce a kind of a handbook for licensed premises in the South Hams that sets out how we'd like them to operate, even if we can't enforce it, even if we can't make them do that. At least then that gives us a sort of moral authority to go back to them and say, "Oi, you know, your pizza boxes are strewn all over Salcombe."
Sounds perfect.
Okay, I did have just one question, and then I am going to move over to Denise on the subject of violence against women and girls, which is a subject very close to my own heart. This obviously coming in from government in 2021. Is this been essentially a pass down from government and we've just copied and pasted it into our policy, or have we done a little bit more sort of specific work into this? And also, as a part of that, if it is a sort of copy and paste exercise, which isn't necessarily a bad thing, because then at least we know that we're already in line with our colleagues across the district and, of course, Plymouth City Council, who I know have done a great deal of work around violence against women and girls in the past couple of years.
So we have our community safety partnership in South Hams, West Devon and Teignbridge, and they work tirelessly with the community safety and the violence against women and girls. So we do have that as a secondary. So whilst the policy does relate to the fact that it is more prevalent at the moment and we put it in, we are active in promoting that with businesses through our community safety partnership.
No, that's perfect. Thank you, Karen, for answering that for me. Councillor Callaghan, did you want to make a passing comment or?
Yeah, just a few comments. Yeah, interesting debate on this, and thanks, Karen. It's obviously an officer-led report, unlike a lot of the reports we get to committees. It's presented by, quite rightly, by the officer in this case, but I've also been briefed on this and looked at the report. You just mentioned the violence against women and girls. I'm pleased that's been brought into the policy. You told us about the Community Safety Partnership, which on the ground works within this field. And the drink and needle spiking has been brought to update the policy, and there's been a debate on the Ask for Angela scheme, and that's extremely important, and where women and girls would need help. So, however we can strengthen the wording, then agreed that we must. I mean, people need to have confidence that if they ask for Angela, people aren't saying, "Well, we don't have anyone called Angela working here." Because it defeats the whole point of it. It's a simple thing. It doesn't really cost anything. It just needs proper training and appreciation of the importance of the issue to women. And so I'm pleased that that's been debated and that we will do that. Just turning to the temporary event notices, which have been discussed, it did strike me as odd that police and environmental health officers can comment within 3 days or whatever on these notices, but town and parish councils can't, but that's beyond our ken, I guess, isn't it? It's the rules that we can't change. But I noticed that I think it was East Portlemouth Parish Council asked for, certainly for notification in due time on these temporary event notices, even if they can't comment, although they can comment via environmental health. So they can do that. And you mentioned that there's a public register online. Can we make sure that town and parish councils are made aware that there is this public register, because there's so many other things they need to be aware of? It's important that they know about it, so and they know that they can make comments through the environmental health channels, and so that they can do, they can be proactive and know how to be proactive as well. So yeah, that's what I want to say. So thank you for all your comments. Interesting debate, important one as well.
Thank you very much. Now, before I move on, was there any other problems, questions, queries from members?
Yes, payment licence stronger.
Sorry, did you manage to edit the pavement licence to your list of edits?
Yeah, so it's a payment licence, strong emphasis on the 1.5 metre rule, accessibility rule, with applications not being accepted. So just stronger wording on that and reviewing the process.
Okay, thank you very much. Therefore, members, we have the following in front of us today, that this committee recommends that the licensing committee considers the draft licensing policy and responds received during the public consultation and makes any changes it deems necessary, which we have done so. And that the licensing committee recommends to the council that this draft of the licensing policy as amended is adopted at the meeting on the 18th of December. We're still going?
It's still going.
Right, thank you. 18th of December 2025 for the period 7th of January 2026 to the 6th of January 2031. So I'm happy to propose this policy as amended.
You already did.
Oh, did you? Okay. Sorry, is there something else you needed, Councillor?
No, I just wanted to second it.
Well, I'm pleased to see there's so much enthusiasm for it. In which case, I'll take Chair's prerogative. I shall propose it. Councillor Rake, I think, has seconded it. Perfect.
You proposed it a long time ago.
Yeah. Well, there we are. Just for the sake of the record, all those in favour, please show, please. It's unanimous. Thank you very much, members. And that comes to the end of our meeting today. Thank you ever so much for joining. Do you want, Councillor Donnelly?
We have the outstanding rogue question about caravans. Can that happen?
Thank you for reminding me about that after the vote, Councillor.
That's not part of the licensing policy, but it is a question that needs to be raised in the licensing committee.
Right, okay. In which case, yeah, do you want to continue?
I don't know that much about it. I don't know whether it is specific to licensing, but it has been raised with us that caravan parks are moving their caravans. They are refusing to move their caravans during out of hours or out of work hours so that people can, because they're blocking roads and things. Is that something that is addressed in licensing? It's been forwarded to us as if it is a licensing issue, so please can you help?
So no is the answer to that one. So whilst there is a caravan site licensing requirement that looks at the public health and safety of the site itself. If it is with regards to movement of the caravans on the public highway, then that isn't within the licensing regime, unfortunately.
Thanks, just needed clarity on that. Thank you.
I think Highway's view is that, I mean, the roads are there for people to use. And, I mean, it's, well, block is it's blocked whilst, if you've got something moving slowly along a road, be that a combine harvester, a tractor or whatever, then people behind it will say they're blocked. And people upstream of it will say, oh, isn't it lovely, there's no traffic. But I mean, I think, you know, you can't. My view is that the caravan park operator has. I mean, it would be delightful, obviously, if they could work in conjunction with their local community, so that disruption is minimised. But I don't think that highways would have any means of saying you can't. I mean, you know, the highways are there and they are a public right of way. And if someone is moving a caravan, yes, it might cause temporary disruption because it's a big thing and goes slowly. But I can't see how one would.
Well, other
restrict that.
large things that get moved over highways are given special assistance with like cars that drive with them and things like that. I know that this is not a licensing thing, so we can end this discussion and have it elsewhere, but there are things that are put in place to move large things that are too big to be on the road.
Yes, and I've always, my understanding is that that's sort of provided by the hauliers or whoever as sort of partly for their own sort of liability protection. But I don't think, as presented, I mean, I don't think that this is a kind of danger to other road users. I accept that there's a concern about emergency vehicles, but I mean, yeah, I don't know why I'm answering this anyway.
The absolute font of knowledge.
Pointed at me.
Councillor Taylor, you.
Yes, I just wanted. I mean, Karen's already explained this to me prior, 10 minutes before the meeting, because we got this problem obviously in my ward. But I mean, they have, as long as they got escort vehicles, there's nothing we can do about it. But I'm in conversation with the owner of our local Part Dean, if you like, and I'm talking to her again to come across communication. That's the main thing, that people know when these things are going to be moved. Not particularly time, but days at least, so they can time their own journeys. Because only a couple of weeks ago, I know that one of the residents lost his doctor's appointment because he got behind one of the caravans. So that's my point.
Okay, thank you, Councillor. Perhaps we can put that under any other business for today's meeting, but I don't want to linger on that any further. I am aware of this particular example, so perhaps Councillor Taylor, Councillor Dommett, myself and Karen can just put our heads together after the meeting is concluded today, and let the rest of the councillors get on to their next business. Okay, so we've had a vote. Thank you very much indeed. Thank you for coming, and I'll declare today's meeting closed.